And we're really, really pleased to and grateful. Thank you, Ludo. Thank you. We are grateful to Nudge Education for hosting the festival. We are grateful to the profs for making Tuesday possible. And we are most grateful to you for being here now. So let's kick off this conversation with some introductions. Ludo, can I leave you to take over from here? Because I'm a panelist this morning.
You are. And I'm just going to...
Ludo.
This is a game of pass the parcel. I'm just going to take that lovely parcel and I'm going to pass it to Richard, who is the host of the chair of today's panel. Ben Caulfield was due to be chair, but he's been struck down by a lurgy. So Richard has very kindly stepped in. Richard was a panelist before, but it will now take over as chair. So I will hand over to him and let him do the talking and the directing and the leading.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you so much, Ludo. And thank you, everybody, for being here today at The Crunch, more crunch, crunchier, where we will continue discussing the biggest topics in tutoring. I'm Richard Evans. I founded a company called The Profs and invested in some others. And our interest in widening participation has really increased over the last couple of years. We partner with universities to help them increase matriculation, particularly Oxbridge and top universities, and are very proud partners of the Access Project, where we deliver webinars on university preparedness and study skills to hundreds of students every year. But enough about me. We're going to be introducing each of our fantastic panelists, some of the best in the business, and delving into topics on accessibility before going into the advent and increase of technology in the industry, and then looking at relationships and what that means for the future of the industry. Let's kick off with our newest addition to the panel, Mr. Johnny Manning, who has founded, created, and directed Manning's Tutors for the past 13 years, is no stranger to increasing access in the tutoring world, and is indeed part of and a partner of the National Tutoring Programme. Welcome, Johnny. How are you doing today?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Richard. I don't think anything more needs to be said on that. Yeah, we've been delivering to disadvantaged pupils in schools for the past 13 years, exactly the same sort of model that the National Tuition Programme has come along and amplified. So thank you very much for inviting me to talk today.
The biggest difference really for Manning's, as opposed to what many of us do for tutoring, is you go into the schools and teach the school children rather than being extracurricular. Is that correct, Johnny?
Yes, so it's always been the school is our customer, and that's meant we've been able to provide the tuition to the disadvantaged pupils. So narrowing that disadvantage gap and trying to slow down this sort of educational arms race where those that have got the best advantages in life just keep on stretching ahead. So yeah, we've always targeted the schools, working with the disadvantaged pupils and making sure that every pupil gets access to the support that they deserve.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much, Johnny. Look forward to jumping into the questions shortly. Next up, we have Jacob Kelly, who started the coronavirus tutoring initiative that you may have seen in the press right at the beginning of COVID, before the NTP. That has, I believe it's correct to say, Jacob, evolved into Tutor the Nation, which was set up by many socially conscious tutoring company founders and has been doing absolutely phenomenal things. Welcome, Jacob. How are you doing this morning?
Hello, very well. Thank you so much for having me and for the very kind introduction.
Please, can you tell us more about Tutor Nation and the great work that you've been doing?
Sure, yeah, no, so Coronavirus Tutoring Initiative, which is the one you mentioned, we set that up during the pandemic, and that was an entirely student-led and student-run project. And we ended up delivering just over 50,000 hours of tuition during the pandemic. And now Tutor the Nation is seeking to replicate that as we move out of the coronavirus pandemic, because we realise, as Johnny has just said, really, that there are still huge problems with educational disparity in the UK. So doing all we can to help that.
I'm going to stop you there. You were a student. You started the company to help 50,000 students. I think at Love Tutoring Festival, that deserves a round of applause, everybody. Thank you for stepping up and showing the tutors do have a social conscience and can help adjust that balance. Amazing. Next up, we have Tom of Tutor Cruncher. You may well have logged an invoice or a lesson on most tutoring systems across the industry, and there's a good chance that Tom Hamilton-Stubber probably built that bit of coding in the industry. Welcome, Tom. Thank you so much for creating the Crunch in the first place. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great, thanks, Richard. Thank you for the very kind introduction. So for those who don't know, my name is Tom Hamilton-Stubber, and I am Managing Director of Tutor Cruncher. We've been going since 2013. We started off as a side project for a tutoring company, and as our own entity, we've been in the industry for 9 years now. So we really know what we're talking about when we say we have all the tools people need to like run their business and grow them and run it to its most efficiently. We ran the numbers the other day, and on average, a company grows 123% with us in their first year. So that's both to our amazing team and our amazing customers, who always are very vocal, Richard included, in telling us what they need and what they want to bring their business up. One of the biggest changes we've seen in the industry is that we're all finally properly talking to each other, which is really exciting for us and makes me really excited for events like our Crunch event and this one, because it's really working.
I think we really are closer than ever before. Social media, right, was a huge change, and it brought a lot of communities online, but they weren't really interacting as much. And now with TTA, with Love Tutoring Festival, with more training programs, the NTP, it's just amazing to have events like this where we can all share experience. And I think it's really part of the professionalizing of the industry. So thank you very much for coming up with this fantastic idea. And thank you, Love Tutoring Festival too, for hosting us today. Awesome. Next up, we have Andrew Ground, the creator of Tutor Fair for every student who can afford it. They promise to help a student who can't. In a previous life, Andrew was also, fun fact, the head of marketing of Love Film, which you may remember using. I certainly do. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us today. And of course, Tutor Fair also has the Tutor Fair Foundation, which we'd love to hear more about, Andrew.
I'm the founder of Tutor Fair. The idea of Tutor Fair is it's supposed to be a marketplace for tutors, and that helps accessibility in one way, which is obvious, which is that we charge a lower margin than a full service agency in exchange for both sides doing self-service. And because it's fully automated, it allows us to intermediate at a lower level of spending and at the sort of average price per hour, which most of the agencies can't really touch. So that is making tutoring and intermediation of tutoring and the data on who teaches what available to everyone. And secondly, we, as you said, Richard, we have the foundation where we set up programs to give tutoring to people who are less advantaged, mainly via schools, and the tutors mostly volunteer to do that. And we found there's a huge well of goodwill for people to do that. And we've now helped 10,000 students since setting up about 10 years ago.
Wow, and I remember Tutor Fair really being, I remember looking at Tutor Fair when I entered the industry a bit over 10 years ago. It was like, really techie, bringing education, online tutoring, bringing one of the first platforms to tutoring and automating things. And it's amazing that you've continued to innovate over the past decade. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. And last but certainly not least, a lady who needs no introduction. We have our hostess of mostess of the festival, Julia Silver, the founder of Qualified Tutor, previously a head of a leading London school, and also the author of the upcoming book, my favorite title, Tutoring is Not a Plan B. Welcome, Julia. How are you doing today?
Richard, you're my poster boy for that book.
I keep buying more copies so I get it faster.
let me change hats for a second and tell you about Qualified Tutor instead of the Love Tutoring Festival. We exist to lead a change in tutoring, to raise standards in tutoring together. So we're a grassroots movement. We bring training, community, and a quality mark to tutoring in order to build trust in this space, to organize it from the bottom up. So whereas you might take a top-down regulatory approach, we have taken a bottom-up opt-in approach to what is best practice in our industry. We proudly train all Manning's tutors. We have a wonderful time doing that because they are such inspiring people to work with. We also train all the nudge tutors and many independent tutors as well, with our level 3 award in education and training, which is written and reimagined specifically for tutors. You can have access to CPD accredited training, to Ofqual accredited training, and now to this growing selection of specialist tutor hubs, which are led by expert tutors. We've got some in the room today, who will enable you to be supported, mentoring, peer support, and ongoing thinking around your subject, because pedagogical expertise is a differentiator in effective tutoring. And we know that tutoring is more effective than classroom learning, but trained tutors are more effective than untrained tutors. And we want our students to get the most effective input possible. So that's who we are, and that's why we show up every day. Please do reach out and get involved.
Thank you so much, Julia. And speaking of getting involved, I see many of you getting active in the chat as we go through the talk. Please do share your opinions, your thoughts, and do ask questions. We'll have time at the end to get through as many of those as we can. So please do introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already. All right, jumping straight into our first topic of today, accessibility. And whilst newest to the panel, certainly no stranger to accessibility, Johnny, I'd love to know how are you enabling accessibility in tutoring, and what are your plans to improve this in the future?
So our approach to accessibility has really revolved around the price point. Is just from the get-go, from 2008, setting out with the ambition of setting the cost of the tuition at a price that was affordable to schools to look at it and think, okay, well, for a £30,000 investment, which is less than the cost of one teacher, we could put in place some education for these pupils that is far more flexible, it's far more targeted, it's far more nuanced than recruiting a teacher who has to teach one subject all year round, spread evenly through the year, and all the other things that go with having a teacher, and their pensions and their wage inflation and their NI. But taking that investment and putting it into tutoring that is priced in the right way, well, then you're going to be able to afford thousands of hours of tuition that can be deployed near the exams, with you getting close and you're identifying, look, these pupils are not making the progress that they deserve, they're behind their progress targets. This pupil needs English, this pupil needs history, this pupil needs science, and it can be rolled out and make sure that it's given to the right pupils. It's a good use of that pupil premium funding. It's a sensible use of that pupil premium funding, and it's an accountable use of that pupil premium funding that is definitely reaching the pupils that it is intended to reach. So for us, accessibility has been pinned onto that price point, I'd say.
Absolutely fantastic. And Jacob, we'd love to hear, how are you doing your bit, or more than your bit, I should say, to help accessibility?
Yeah, for sure. So we're also working with schools. I suppose one of the differences with us is that we use university student volunteers largely. So most of our tutors are current university students who agree to spend an hour or two just helping out in a subject that they're very familiar with. And because of that, because we're powered by volunteers and run quite a lean organisation, what we offer to the schools can be completely free, which for some schools who are already very stretched can be very useful. But I think the key thing that you picked up on there, Johnny, which is really important, is that precise targeting of the right schools and the right pupils. It's really tricky to get right, and it takes a lot of time to really consider, who's going to benefit most from this tuition and how are they going to benefit. I think that's what we're spending a lot of time at the moment trying to work out, really, is, how do we really precisely target those areas and those schools that really need this support.
And a question back to you, Jacob, and then Johnny, by all means, pick it up too. How do you decide who to allocate it to, whether it's which school gets it, or which students or classes or age groups? How are those tough decisions made? How much of it is advisory and how much of it is mandated by the school?
Sure, yeah, and I'd be interested to hear Johnny's thoughts on this, but for us, definitely we're being led by the school, because we think, they're at this stage best equipped to understand which of their pupils will benefit. So some of the schools we work in, we're working to support those pupils who are, kind of top achievers and looking towards Oxbridge and medicine applications, which is fantastic. And other schools we work with, it's those pupils who are really at risk of dropping out, especially over the last 18 months. They've really lost that spark for learning, and we're helping them there. And we're really being led by the schools because we think they really understand their pupils and who will benefit the most.
Yeah, I'd follow on from what Jacob was saying. It's for us, the most beneficial tuition is when the tuition company and the school are working together for the interest of the pupils, and there's a good collaboration between them. So we'll be having introductory talks with the school to find out which pupils it is that they want to target this at. And I've been a huge fan of the 9-to-1 changes compared to the old A-star to C, because going back to the old grading system, all the school wanted to do was move pupils that were on a D to a C in maths and English, because that was such a binary pass-fail that hit the headline school statistics. You change that to 9-to-1 and you have the progress 8 figures that the school are more concerned about. And suddenly moving a pupil from a 7 to 8 in history is just as valuable as moving someone up into the pass grade. So we've seen the breadth of the tuition has massively increased thanks to that. So yeah, it's about working with school. They know their pupils best. We don't want to spend time testing the pupils when so much testing happens within the school as well. The pupils don't need to be tested again. So again, we're working with the school and saying, look, what are the 5 topics that this individual child is struggling with, so that our tutor can jump in and target and plug those gaps in learning that your teacher doesn't have the time to do because they've got to move on and do the next bit in the class. Nothing more frustrating than when a teacher sends us the same topic for all 50 pupils in the cohort. It's like, if all 50 are struggling, you can do a class on that. Please give us something nuanced so we can get down to the grind here, please.
More education, less exams all day long. A quick question from the audience for you, Johnny, from Joanne Adams. Welcome, Joanne. Johnny, do you mostly work with secondary schools?
We're secondary specialists, years 7 to 11, and then 6th form as well. It's a huge emphasis on GCSEs and A-levels.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Andrew, let's bring you into the conversation. Please tell us more about the amazing work at Tutoring and what you think is the future for accessibility within tutoring.
Well, Richard, I was just thinking that that the conversation was missing you, because when we met for breakfast, the thing that you said was, oh, look, one of the big things in increasing the accessibility of tutoring is about the attitude that people have towards tutoring. And I think that really triggered off a sense of common purpose in everybody, because obviously we're all doing different things when we come to our precise targeting and trading and all the rest of it. But the thing where we are all together is we're all being tutors, and tutoring has had a really bum rap for years and years. The education establishment calls it the shadow education, and they say, oh, you shouldn't really need any of it, and it's dubious quality, and we don't. Ed, my partner, rung up the Department for Education, said, did they have a policy for tutoring? And he was told, no, we don't have a policy on tutoring, but if we did, we'd like to regulate it. And that sort of, I think, says what the education establishment thinks about it. The schools all say, oh, generally, oh, you don't need it, and you shouldn't have to have a tutor because we do everything for you. Although, and the NTP is a complete revolution in that, because, and the work that Johnny's doing, of course, is the exception to that. But by and large, teachers are anti-tutor. And then the press is just full of, oh, tutoring is just for the rich, and it's for people who go on their private jets. And this terrible article in the Sunday Times, which we probably all saw, it's like, well, that of course is true that there are some people who have a ridiculous amount of tutoring, but for many people, it can be a few hours that just unlock the understanding and let them teach themselves and find out how they can further their own reading and their own understanding. And it can be a tremendous small amount of time and cost to unlock a huge amount of benefit. And I think that story is just not being told. And that's the thing where it's all of our mission to push it out. And that's what we need to think about, is how to organize it so the tutoring industry talks about itself in a way that's attractive and efficient and appealing to all the different participants.
I could talk and have in a previous event, so I won't out the PR.
Yeah, you probably would have said that better than me. But
I lost it. I'm always happy, more vocal in the conversation, but I will try and be chair. But I will. And thank you for giving the position. I'll come to you, Julia, very shortly, because I really want to hear what you have to say on this. But I remember when I joined the tutoring industry, it felt so fragmented. And some of you might be sitting there today, Probably not if you're here today, but there are many tutors sat in their living room, in their bedroom, thinking there's an industry out there. I'm just here to help individual students. And I remember when we had Mary Cook, a big prominent speaker for education at the National Tutoring Conference by the TTA. And I asked tutors afterwards what they thought of it. And they said, yeah, kind of big picture, right? It's not really relevant to me. And I really want us to challenge that view where we are all in the industry. We all do have a responsibility to play, and talking about the imaging, the messaging, the positioning to make sure that we overturn this foolish stigma around education, shadow education. And yes, books about the adventures in tutoring does feel like a bit of a backward step when the industry is doing such a good job talking about NTP and the rest. But yeah, everyone get inspired, get on social media. The simple call to action from me is always just share your successes. When you have a student who's happy or you've changed their life, tell everyone on social media, even if it's just your mum and your auntie, tell them about the successes, because if we aren't being proud about being tutoring, how the tempted to do a how the hell is everyone else going to love you, but how the hell is everyone else going to be excited about the industry? Julia, over to you, please.
So much, and I do agree with you that we need to normalize the profession. I just wanted to share with you, on Thursday we're going to be hosting an open forum to create a white paper, the title of which will be "What do tutors think about tutoring in 2022 and beyond?" And I think that's that next step that Andrew and Richard are pointing to just there, where rather than talking at, we're talking with, and then we are letting the DFE and the government know what we think our profession should look like. It will be informed, well, it'll be started by a presentation from Robin Walker MP, who is the Minister of School Standards, and also Dame Alison Peacock, who is CEO of the Chartered College of Teaching. So we'll be bringing their voices in to represent mainstream education, but really the outcome for that session will be a document of shared thinking built up through a series of small discussions. I wanted to point you to that session because I want you to understand that this is not a talking at. This is the beginning of a talking with. So please see if you can clear your decks for Thursday at 12 o'clock. And thanks for letting me sort of steer the conversation in a different way there. Richard, thanks.
12 noon, put in your diaries, everyone. Love Tutoring Festival. Tom, I'd love to hear your thoughts on accessibility and what do you think is the future of accessibility and tutoring?
Yeah, sure. So it was interesting. I thought what you were saying about we're normalizing tutoring as a profession, but I think it also really matters to normalize tutoring as an avenue for the student. I don't think that's like there's this stigma around tutoring being only for the rich. That's not just for the people doing the tutoring, but it's definitely for the students as well. And I think that's really important, and that's what we need to talk about a lot as well. In terms of what TutorCruncher is doing, because we don't interact with the parents or students directly, because we talk to customers, it's a bit trickier for us, and that's why we organized events like the Crunch, so we can kind of give back to the community in that way and try and grow the industry in that way. So yeah, I mean, the accessibility is kind of three things for me. There's affordability, and TutorCruncher helps everyone keeps their price down by allowing you to manage the business with a good piece of software. It doesn't require a load of admins. We've got people turning over 40k a month with 1 or 2 admins. So we hopefully allow you to keep your price point down as industry, as professionals, so that it's affordable for people. There's awareness, and that's why we need to run these events and get everyone aware, which we've just been talking about. And then there's the actual access, making sure everyone has physical access to a computer, tablet, phone, or the tutor themselves. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that now that tutoring's much more online. Do you find that everyone has access to a phone, tablet, computer, whatever, if they need to be online, or a tutor if they don't?
It's an interesting question, and anyone in the audience, please do jump out. Johnny, please, I see your hands up.
I was, before Tom asked that question, I thought about putting my hand down because I actually wanted to pick up on one of Andrew's points about sort of teacher resistance to tutoring, because I think even with the National Tuition Programme, it very much still exists. Let's have a really interesting chat with Will from Bramble the other day, because you've got this very strange paradox going on with schools where if you mention lengthening the school day, so increasing salaries and asking them to work longer, it's met with unbelievable resistance. But if you say, well, can we pay you to come in after school and do an hour's tutoring? They say, yes, please, we want to do that. The two things are actually exactly the same thing, just phrased differently. And you still do get this resistance from teachers, not from senior leadership teams, but from teachers saying, why are you paying for a tutor to come in? They feel a little bit undermined by this. And I think that's really important for tuition companies to take this stance of working collaboratively with them to overcome that. And we're seeing this played out at the moment with the advent of the school-led tutoring grant and the competition that's having with the national tuition programme. The numbers published last week, we can see school-led tutoring grant leaping way above the national tuition programme. And I think there's partly two reasons. One, because the national tuition programme, the platform that's been built for it this year is unnecessarily complicated, admin heavy, and is probably putting teachers off and pushing them towards the simpler school-led tutoring grant route. But also the school-led tutoring grant is being used to pay existing staff within the schools to work after school. The issue with that is that they were probably working as hard as they possibly could before the pandemic. So to assume that you can pay your existing staff and somehow catch up and they could somehow do any extra, I think is a bit of a fallacy, unfortunately. So yeah, there's still hearts and minds to be won within schools to let them know that the tuition industry isn't there to replace them. It's not there to say it's any better than them. It's the cavalry. It's extra hands on deck coming in to support them and help with this catch-up effort.
Thank you so much, Johnny. And before I come to you, Julie, I'd love also to hear from Jacob, obviously, who does lots of work with schools. The chat, both directly and a few private direct messages, thank you, asking about a few questions combined here. What's the resistance from teachers? Is there still this distrust of teacher versus tutor? Has that changed the pandemic, increased, decreased as a function of NTP? And I'll remind everyone that according to a Guardian survey, 25% of teachers are also tutors, which I think shows that it's we are together in this. But yeah, Jacob, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think so far we've been quite lucky that we found teachers who are pretty enthusiastic about what we're doing. I think maybe because we're free, it's hard not to be enthusiastic. But I think going back to something that Tom said as well about the importance of the pupil's attitude to tutoring too, this is something that I've really noticed personally, and I know it's something that a couple of people have been talking about in the chat. I found that for me, before I got to university, the background that I came from, the idea of having a tutor, I think I'd have been a little bit embarrassed if I had a tutor. And it was only when I got to university and started speaking to some of my peers who'd been at top private schools and very well educated, where having a tutor was seen as something that was sort of very natural. And actually, if you were ahead in class, you'd get a tutor to be even further ahead. So there is this huge gap as well in attitudes to tutoring amongst pupils, and that's something we need to target too. And then finally, on access to tech, yes, it's a huge issue, and it still is a huge issue. We're really concerned that often we help the most advantaged of disadvantaged students, those who have access to tech, and also something that's often forgotten, just a quiet place to study on their own and to concentrate. So more needs to be done. And I think thankfully schools are realizing that and giving pupils the space and the tech to do that. But it's definitely something to be conscious of when you work with pupils who are more disadvantaged.
So many things to pick up on there, and great to the chat buzzing. Please do keep asking questions. Just a quick fire one on there for you. Any ideas, how do we tackle that stigma or resistance from students themselves when really you're going to schools and giving free one-to-one help? I understand that stigma exists. Any idea how we as an industry help to tackle that? Jacob.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question, Richard. I was reading
with the it's very, very buzzing, and please do keep it coming, everybody. I said so many things in there, but one from me: how do we tackle that stigma from students themselves who are resistant to receiving help? I appreciate I could ask that to any of the teachers or tutors in the room, but specifically in the context of
I think what we've found that the best way to do it is just to get them in front of a tutor and to realize the benefits of it and to realize how brilliant it can be, helping them just really push forward and feel more confident and interested in what they're doing. So I think the number one thing is just trying to increase the reach of tutoring, because the minute they receive it and realize how brilliant it can be, that stigma starts to be broken down.
All right.
We like to talk about tutoring as your person. Your tutor is your person. And students often don't have an opportunity to have that person who's there for them and can create space for them and make them feel heard. So I think that there's something about that in terms of showing students, especially NTP students, that tutoring is a privilege. You need to sort of carve out that space for them. Thinking about the well-being that we were looking at yesterday, Charlotte's nodding alongside there. If you can give them that sense of space and commitment and focus and trust, then they'll begin to understand that it's a privilege and not something that's a punishment, which we have heard before. And the other thing is user experience, Richard. Johnny pointed to it a little bit, but if we really want schools and students to be on board, the user experience has to be good. And I think that's an interesting thing when you bring the private and the public sectors together, isn't it? Because the private sector has to learn to be good at user experience and the public sector doesn't tend to bother. And this sort of clash between the two things is, it causes friction. And that friction leaves the student and the tutor in the middle of it, not getting what they need. So yes, we speak about communication, we speak about collaboration, and a lot can be done to sort of, and I think that's what we found. I mean, there was an article today, wasn't there, in the Times, that if we can reduce the friction around user experience with the NTP, we're going to be improving uptake.
Thank you so much, Julia, which segues great into our second theme, but by all means, please keep making those links to the future. Please do keep on talking about accessibility as a theme too. But let's bring in our techies, Tom and Andrew, in that order. How are you using technology to disrupt the tutoring industry, and what tech do you wish existed or was more prominent in the tutoring industry? Tom first.
Yeah, I mean, as we are kind of one of the technologies that people leverage to improve their company, it would be a bit much for me to bang on about how amazing TutorCruncher is again. But I think programs, so it's unfortunate we don't have Ben Caulfield here today, but programs like his, I think, are going to be really important in the next couple of years. I think they're going to really come to the forefront, where you have a very intelligent service that sounds like it's a bit detached from kind of the teacher or the relationship, but we'll get into that later. But a child does a course online, and then the course, the clever technology AI basically finds the holes in the tutors in the kids' learning, in the students' learning, and finds the best course on how to teach them and what to teach them. And I think those are going to be really, really powerful. So ED, for those who don't know, teaches maths like this, and it's proven to have really good results. And it's a really cool service. And I think they're going to be really powerful, where you have the technology that the child is doing their course on their computer in a class, and then they have the teacher wanders around the class and helps them out at the problems they have. So the teacher doesn't have to just sit there and lecture. You have a very interactive service, and the teacher helps out in much more of kind of a tutor capacity. They're helping out just with the problems that the student is having.
Thank you so much. And Andrew.
So I guess our use of technology is really around helping people to find helping the clients to find the tutors. So we have loads and loads of pages about who teaches maths in Fulham, for example, and those are all dished up automatically. So we've spent a lot of time on making it so that we can do a customized recommendation for people in less than half a second, which will look at how much tutoring they've done, how much they've taught this subject, whether they're likely to be available right now, based on all the behavioral data that we can see on the website. So that's our sort of core thing for the clients, which puts the tutoring at their fingertips, and makes you feel like, oh, I can always get someone to help me with this and that and the other. And then the other thing that, from the point of view of the tutors, is that to create ways in which they can show and differentiate themselves online. The thing that we haven't talked about which we probably ought to, is online is itself a revolutionary thing for the industry, technology to create accessibility. So it is now possible and quite easy. We could all talk, and probably most of you are all doing tutoring online, so I don't really need to yak on about that. But remember that is a revolution. 5 years ago, it was less than 10% of all the tutoring in the country, you know, and it's now possible. Everyone does it. They're all talking to their grannies online, and they can talk to a tutor, and they can get some customized advice, which simply wasn't possible because of the prevalence of broadband, the prevalence of everyone knowing how to use Zoom. All these things that have happened have created the possibility of a revolution in tutoring. But the thing that I was going to say is that for tutors, that will make the market very different, because it's not about the school gate conversation so much. It's a more stylized thing where they will be competing online against thousands of other tutors, and in a more in a different way. From you can't be the person for Lichfield to do the 11 plus, if there is such a person, which is how that's the sort of the tiny market dominance that used to be the case in tutoring. It will be a different game competing online, and so that's why we've come up with lots of different ways in which tutors can enhance their profile online. So that's I guess the two sides of technology for tutoring as I see it.
Sorry, I can't resist. Let me jump in.
Yes, she's going to come up with a quality mark. Which
Julia,
you just teed me up there.
You say face-to-face is just as valuable. That's my QI sort of like buzzword. So please explain.
No, I wasn't. I was going to go down the quality mark route, if you'll forgive me, but I'll do both if you want. Andrew, you and I have spoken about putting the qualified tutor membership card on your profile, because the whole concept of qualified tutor is a disruptive name. If you can choose a qualified tutor, why would you choose anyone else? And that's intentional, because parents need and students need transparency in order to have trust. And it used to be that we were limited by geography, but also reassured by geography. You know, Charlotte was tutoring her local students, and now because she can reach students everywhere, she's in this competitive space. So we need technology that creates transparency and closer language of trust, fewer proxies, and more accurate understanding of what a qualified tutor would mean. That was the one thing. And then the second thing is this thing about what's real and what's virtual, Richard. And you know, Lucy and I have spoken about this before, that yes, tutors love tutoring online because it saves them turnaround time. And Richard, you don't have to eat your lunch on the tube, right? But some students need you to sit next to them. And some students need you to sit next to them sometimes. And some students need you to sit next to them for the first few sessions before you get into a groove with them. But if you can understand how to blend intentionally, then you can really leverage the combination of opportunities that virtual and face-to-face bring. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Johnny, I'd love to have a response to that. And also, as Andrew said, online tutoring. So my brother created BitPaper, one of the early online whiteboards, and the resistance of the industry and the tutoring companies and me on why do we need that? You know, that was 6 years ago, right? And now all tutoring was done online, and it looks like the majority of tutoring is going to stay online. So the future came so quickly. And I want to pose my question to the panel. What's the next one? What's the one that we're just starting to think is a bit quirky that in 6 years' time, we're all going to be using?
Okay, well, okay, is the future here now, or has it been forced upon us too fast? And is everyone ready for it? I'm not too sure. We were 95% face-to-face pre-pandemic. We already had a relationship with Bramble, so that we were trying to reach outside of London and sort of saying, you know, look, this isn't an inferior product or an inferior service, which is why we priced it the same. You know, this is just as good, if not better. You've got lesson recordings, you've got searchables, so you can go back and see when you spoke about quadratic equations, which you don't get with the face-to-face. And there was still resistance. And then the pandemic came along, and of course, everything turned on its head, as Andrew points out, and is 95% online now. But we came back into this academic year kind of expecting it to right itself a little bit and to go back maybe to 50-50 online, face-to-face. We'd expanded and we'd taken on tutors in Manchester and Newcastle as well, in addition to, you know, our London home. And certainly the schools have come back with an expectation that it's reverting back towards some more face-to-face, and they are asking for that. Our tutors, however, I think they've got too used to a good thing, as someone was pointing out in the chat, that, you know, you've got this fast turnaround time between sessions. You can do a 3 o'clock session and a 4 o'clock session and a 5 o'clock session without having to worry about taking the tube or cycling in the rain between them. And even though we've tried encouraging them towards face-to-face by increasing the price that we pay them without actually changing the rate that we're charging the schools, we're still only getting, I think, it's settling down around 22% of our tutors willing to take on in-person tuition at this time. Whether that's because of COVID concerns, and I think they are quite large still. If you're a tutor and you're going from one school to another on the tube and to someone's home, you're putting yourself at quite a lot of exposure. Or whether it's this convenience and this economic advantage of tutoring online and being able to crack out more hours in one go, I'm not quite sure. And only when the pandemic has fully subsided will we know. So yes, the future's here and it's arrived very, very quickly, as you point out. But I think the appetite for the face-to-face is still there, and there's going to be some sort of market corrections taking place in the coming years to address that, I feel.
Thank you so much, Johnny. And before Tom, I bring you in, because I see you budding. One of the best things about these events is we can all learn from each other. So we have over 70 professional tutors. Could everyone please put into the chat your game-changing piece of tech? It can be Zoom, it can be Google Docs, whatever, but why not? We might as well all learn from each other. So I'd love to hear from you. What is the thing that we all use? Oh, shameless bit paper plug there. Thank you, Helen. Tom, what's the future? You're one of the people who's probably going to end up writing the code for it. So give us an insight.
Well, yeah, we'll see. I don't know, in the classroom, and this is something that's not really talked about, it's kind of a bit of a kind of naffy thing, but extended reality, so augmented reality or virtual reality, which isn't accessible at the minute because of the cost and the devices needed, but I think will be really prevalent in the classroom quite soon. And I think it will be really cool, you know, having kids who can interact with, you know, the dinosaur in the room, or view, get their phone and scan all the books in front of them and read their colleagues or read their classmates' book reports and that kind of thing. I think will be a really good addition to tutoring and keep kids in a much more interactive way. But it's making it accessible, and obviously that will be a problem going forward. But I think in the next couple of years we will see that. Other than that, yeah, tools like BitPaper and the other online classrooms that we've integrated with are really cool. And I think I was interested to hear thoughts on, does that make teaching prep a lot easier? Because when you're teaching online, you can have everything already there. And is that why perhaps some tutors don't want to teach face-to-face, because it also requires a lot more prep as well as just going to the actual place?
I'd love them, and please, again in chat, please do keep on asking this, because this might be better for chat than the panel. I feel that we've made huge strides, particularly in online. I mean, come on, tutoring industry was way ahead of the formal school industry. We moved online overnight with minimal disruption. I appreciate it was easier, but we were very ahead, and we had pioneers be there. The next challenge, I think, for tutoring industry, which I feel we're a bit behind on relative to other industries, particularly the schooling industry, is shared prep. Many tutors use the lesson plans of teachers, but I haven't seen any websites. And please, again, chat, do let me know, because I'd love to use them myself. Are there, a lot of websites and companies I'm not using which provide ready-made and adaptable lesson plans for one-to-one tutoring or for small group tutoring, such as the NTP? Because that's a technology I have seen elsewhere. Julia, you were first, and then Tom, and then
I put my actual hand up. Did you see that?
I did.
If you've not seen EdPlace yet, it's worth having a look at.
What's that? Sorry, Anyplace.
EdPlace.
EdPlace. Sorry.
Not sponsored by, just a friend of. I think it's really, really useful to look at their resources because they're mapped against the curriculum, reception to GCSE, maths, English, science, assessments and resources. If I was tutoring today, I would use them as a bread and butter jumping off point, and then enable myself to be responsive because I had a resource ready to go. It would save me a lot of planning. And I think that that's, again, if you're using Twinkle, then you're also using TES, and you're also using White Rose, and you're also using Hamilton Trust. And that's an hour of preparation just shopping around for resources. If you can find one that's good enough to be your bread and butter so that the rest of your creativity can be spent on being responsive, you've saved yourself a lot of time, especially in those first years when you're learning your curriculum. So if you've been teaching the same curriculum again and again, and I know Richard is really, really into specializing in one unit of one subject, right? Then you learn it up and you become the expert. But if you, like a primary school tutor, are delivering more than one subject at the same time, what you want is a bread and butter resource.
Thank you. And yes, a small plug, at 3 p.m. today, if you have absolutely nothing better to do, I will be talking about how I used increased preparation, increased specialization, and a new model I want to propose to all tutors to discuss academically. So 3 p.m. today, how I tripled, it's something vulgar, how I tripled my income, and you can do the same. But I would love to share with all of you amazing people then. We have only about 5 minutes left with our amazing panelists, and there's one more theme which we started to bring in. Of course, Julia, I'm going to start with you here, which is relationships, the importance of relationships. Is AI going to replace us? Or more specifically, how do we really make the most of that relationship in an online world and in the metaverse, as the chat is?
I definitely only have 60 seconds. So I'm going to point you to the way that we learn in early years, and the way that an early years practitioner will watch a student learn and enable them and facilitate their learning and lead them on gently. And that way of being really, really child-centered. And really, why do we stop that and turn into a one-size-fits-all classroom model just for the sake of industrialized teaching? And I think that the relationship that's right at the center of tutoring is about trust. And the way we were speaking about it yesterday in our conversations around SEND, we were talking about really seeing the student, what they need and what their next steps are. And that's really the nub of that relationship. It's that trusted adult who knows the student and knows what their next steps are. And yes, adaptive learning, adaptive technology can do tons of that. But we want people who are raised by people. And so that relationship has to stay at the center of things.
Thank you so much. That was a really good 60 seconds. Just in the order that you are on my screen, Johnny, how do we make the most of relationships? Are we going to be replaced by AI?
No, I mean, there's no chance of us being replaced by AI. I mean, as much as our largest frustration day to day is that a tutor is ill or has missed a train and can't reach a lesson, and we think, oh my goodness, wouldn't it be much better if we had robot tutors who didn't let us down? You cannot replace that physical human interaction between people. So I say physical, but it could be digital, but human interaction. It's a mentoring role. It's tutoring, and anyone. I mean, I have a business mentor that I see on a monthly basis, and it's the most valuable thing to sit and discuss with someone your problems and your challenges. And I think that's what tutoring is about: is that someone is opening up to someone and saying, "I just don't get this." And as long as there's that trust and that safe space for them to say that often doesn't exist in a classroom. Yeah, that's the real benefit of tutoring, and you're not going to get that with AI.
Thank you so much, Johnny. I totally agree with you. Tom, you're next in my chat list.
Yeah, I fully agree with Johnny. I think there's having someone there so that a student can tell their problems to, gives them self-confidence to talk about like the issues they're having and then work through them, which again builds self-esteem and self-confidence as they go. Means they'll be much better in classrooms, they'll be better in life, they've developed much better communication skills. And yeah, you'll never replace that relationship with a computer. Says the techie.
Seem to be fairly agreed here, Andrew.
Well, being boring, I will say I agree with everybody. There's absolutely no chance that there will be less tutoring being done in 30 years' time than there is now. And I say that because it's growing in every country in the world. It's nothing to do with failure of education system. It's to do with higher expectations of what we want from kids, and that we want to make sure that everyone comes out of education being able to do all these things. And it was okay 30 years ago for 10% of people to be able to leave school at the level to go to university, and that's just simply not the case in the future society. So we will need a tutor, and I would say that we need a tutor to do three things. They must be a teacher, and in teaching, they need to focus on what the kid understands. And that's very difficult for an AI to do, although the people like Ben have made a big attempt to do that, but only for maths and only for other things. So they can, by listening carefully, they can work out what they understand. And second of all, the tutor is a mentor. So it's trying to work out what the kid's wanting to do and to harness their motivation to create the love of learning. And the third thing is it's coaching. So it's about understanding how you're performing. Why did you freeze up in front of that question? Why were you not able to see this this answer when you actually knew it, when you came down to it? And that coaching and managing your performance and managing your motivation, ability to focus is also a huge thing. And I think that in all of those areas that you see, and Johnny's alluded to, we all need to learn from each other, because society's got so complicated that to be able to operate in it, we all need to use each other's skills and knowledge and motivation to get there.
Thank you so much. Jacob, 10 seconds.
Yep, don't think I'm going to say anything innovative here. I think if you think that AI can replace tutoring, then you're seeing it in too much of a one-dimensional way. It's not just about delivering content, which an AI might be able to do. It's about that, three-dimensional, seeing the pupil and seeing their challenges and working with them to solve those, which I don't think an AI will accomplish, at least not yet.
Absolutely nailed it. I have never in my life finished on time, so I'm going to try very hard now. So thank you so much, everybody. Amazing discussion in the chat. So thank you to all of you for giving up the precious time for joining us. Thank you to my fellow panelists, Julia, Johnny, Tom, Andrew, and Jacob. Obviously, get well soon, Ben. And I hope to see more of you throughout the day and throughout the week at Love Tutoring Festival. Happy tutoring, everybody.
Thanks so much, Richard.
Thank you all.
And Julia, it was amazing.
Before we go, I asked Richard to finish with 5 minutes to go. So a huge thank you to all of you panelists, and obviously a massive thanks to Richard for stepping in at the last minute there. This is what the Love Tutoring Festival is all about. This is not the end of the festival, even if you think that you've attended one event. There is a whole day's activities coming up today. Next we have Alex Asher, who's just joined the Zoom room.
We're all here. I can't hear you yet. Let me just try.
Alex will be talking about marketing strategies and will be giving us a masterclass. We have Sharon Corley just before lunch, who many of you will have heard of, who will be talking to us about how to succeed as a tutor. Of course, Richard will be speaking after lunch about increasing your earnings as a tutor. And I'd like to point you towards Julia's session tomorrow, Wednesday, at 2 p.m. just after lunch, where she'll be propounding her views about her new book and about the vision behind that. Love Tutoring. Tutoring is not Plan B.
Sorry, just to clarify.
Two more things I'd like to point you towards. Two more things I'd like to point you towards. First of all, you can save the Zoom chat. If you go to the Zoom chat, the 3 little dots next to the smiley face, you can save to your computer, which will allow you to look back at all of the chats, conversation that's come through here while Richard and the rest of the panelists have been talking. The recordings will be available on the Love Tutoring library which is on our website, sponsored by Johnny and the rest of the Mannings team. So all of the recordings from the festival will go up there. And just before we finish, I would like to show you a short video from the sponsors of day 2 at the festival, the Profs. I'm sure Richard will be delighted to watch his video editing team in action here. So a short video here, and then we will be wrapping up this roundtable event.
Hello and welcome to The Profs, a web platform that empowers tutors to share their knowledge globally. We're a collective of private tutors from a wide range of academic disciplines. Together, we've helped thousands of students improve their understanding of university courses and achieve their career goals. We're innovators at heart, working closely with our network of academics to develop new technologies aimed at providing the best learning experience possible. BitPaper is our collaborative whiteboard, enabling students to work with leading academics both nationally and internationally. This greatly improves the standard of online tuition we offer. BitPaper's notes synchronize instantly. Tutorials can be recorded and exported to PDF, creating permanent, shareable, high-quality resources. We're creating a global knowledge-sharing economy with our world-class tutors, exceptional track record, and market-leading prices. We love teaching, and it's our mission to improve access to high-quality education for everyone.
So you can go and find out a little bit more about the Profs at theprofs.co.uk, and you can find out more about the Profs as well from 4 till 6 p.m. Every day of the festival, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as you can about around 15 of our other key partners who will be available to talk to and to find out more about from 4 till 6 p.m. Today, Wednesday and Thursday. So don't miss out on the discovery rooms as well. But for one final time, a huge thank you to our panelists here and to our host, Richard. I'm sure those conversations, I'm sure there'll be a even more crunch event. Hands up if you'd like to host the even more crunch. But it's a wonderful group of individuals who are leading the way in our industry at this time. Please stay on for our next event, which will be with Alex Asher very, very shortly from 11 a.m. Cheerio.
Thanks. Cheers, guys.